Hi, my name is Dr. Jeff Noonan. I'm a professor in the Department of Philosophy at the University of Windsor, and I'm here to greet you virtually, unfortunately. I don't know how many of these videos I've made in the last year, three or four, and I sincerely hope this is the last of them because I'm tired of it, and I'm looking forward to being able to sit down and discuss philosophy and to teach it in person again very soon. So perhaps by the time you start your studies in September, we will be back on campus. But for the moment, we are not. And so I'm going to do my best to talk a little bit about philosophy and the department and why it's a good idea for you to study philosophy, whether as your major or as a minor or in combination with another major or just to take a class. We're happy to accommodate any degree of interest. As I said a moment ago, COVID is still imposing restrictions on our ability to gather in large numbers in public, and so the open house is occurring virtually once again. But as a philosopher, I suppose COVID has done us a favor in a certain sense because it's really forced us to think about what is of ultimate importance in our lives, hasn't it? And that's what philosophy is in the most fundamental sense. It's an inquiry into what is of ultimate importance, what is good, what is true, what is meaningful, what we owe each other, if anything, but more practical questions as well. How we ought to organize our societies and why, what democracies are, what justice is. These are all fundamentally philosophical questions. And no one can get through life, no matter where you come from, um, without posing those questions. There are all sorts of different answers, of course, but what's most important from a philosophical perspective is not the answer, but the question. Philosophy offers answers, of course, but it opens up reality in a different way because it teaches us to pose questions. And I think that's really its fundamental difference from other disciplines. Mm. All disciplines are important. Human knowledge is complex and multifaceted. We need natural scientists, we need engineers, we need political scientists, we need artists, right? Human life draws on makes all sorts of different demands on our intellect. But philosophy underlies all the different disciplines. And it underlies them as the question that opens up the real. What do I mean by that? You're sitting here watching this video, you're at home or wherever you are, you're in an environment which you probably don't question, right? You simply accept it. It's given, it's familiar to you. You don't have to ask whether the table exists or whether your dog is really there or silly questions like that, right? But what happens when something disconfirms your expectations? What happens when the normal routine is disrupted? Now we have a gap between what we expected to happen and what did happen. And what we realize, right, is that things are not always as they seem. Right? Even the most mundane events have layers of complexity underneath them, right? Presuppose a certain history. But if we don't ever ask the question, right, even the silly sounding question, right, the cliched philosophical question, how do I know I am who I am? How do I know the table is real? Right? When we pose those sorts of questions, we're not really entertaining the possibility that ordinary material reality isn't as it seems. What we're doing is asking ourselves, how do we know it? How do we justify it? Right? If someone challenges us, what argument can we give them to convince them? Right? So that's what philosophy does. It opens up reality by posing deep questions that make us think about how we could answer them if someone really demanded an answer from us. So philosophy is questioning on the one hand and it's argument on the other. Now, arguments are not what we typically take them to be, right? We typically take arguments to be forms of fighting or conflict, right? But arguments in philosophy are not fighting and bickering and conflict. They are offering reasons to someone who asks for them in order to convince them that something is the case, something is true. Now, as I said earlier, philosophy is first of all the question, but it's also the answer. But not an answer that you would get in a physics class or a chemistry class, right? If someone asks you what the atomic weight of hydrogen is, you give them an answer, you look it up on the periodic table, and we move on, right? Answers to philosophical questions aren't that straightforward. Of course, there's more complicated natural scientific questions too, where the answer isn't so straightforward. I don't mean to say that science is all trivial that we can read off the periodic table, right? But philosophical answers to philosophical questions are different because there's a certain uncertainty involved, right? I ask a question, right? I open up a problem, and the person I'm arguing with has to give me an answer, right? But that answer, of course, can also be questioned. And so there's a back and forth process that's really essential to philosophy. And if it works right, we sometimes get down to facts and truths, but sometimes we simply learn that we can disagree in a responsible way. And I think both of those issues are of fundamental importance today. I began by talking about COVID and the way it's made us all reflect on what is of ultimate importance. And I've moved to talking about the practice of philosophy as a form of questioning and response and further questioning and further response. And that presupposes a joint commitment, right? In our ordinary sense of argument, and sometimes in the law, we're focused on winning. But philosophical arguments and philosophical arguers should not be focused on winning. They should be focused on finding out and proving what is true to the best of their ability in the context in which the argument occurs. Right? We don't always get down to absolute certainty. In moral matters and political matters and social matters, we probably never get down to absolute certainty. That's not what's important. What's important is a joint commitment to figuring things out and discovering the truth as best we are able and communicating it. I think too often today, people are locked in to their own perspective and listen to other people only long enough to disagree. And that entrenches society in certain hard factions, right? I'm sitting in my house. It's only about half a kilometer to the Detroit River, and across the river is of course, Detroit in the States. And we can see the consequences in the States of society becoming factionalized, right? Two or more different groups who cannot listen to each other and cannot argue in the philosophical sense. Right? And some of those groups have become so alienated from their society that they believe things for which there is no evidence, and they won't commit to arguing the point. And that's an extremely dangerous situation for any society to be in. We can find analogies and examples in Canada, but things have not become quite as polarized here at this point. Can philosophy solve those problems? Yes, it can, but not by offering a formula, but by recommending a way of life, a disposition towards reality, a disposition towards each other. And that's what philosophy cultivates, right? When you study philosophy, you're not studying for a career as a philosopher. Maybe some of you will go on to become professors like me. You could go on to become anything at all, right? Because philosophy is not a set of talents or skills or factoids or truths. It's a disposition towards relating to the world as questionable and having obligations to other people to answer their questions when an account of our beliefs is asked of us. And that has important implications across the board, far more important than what you end up doing for a living. All of us are going to end up doing something for a living, right? So if people are afraid that studying philosophy as a major is somehow going to consign you to unemployment, it's not, right? First of all, the economy works independently of what people study, Whether there are jobs available or not has little to do with what you study in university. Right? What's more important is what you get out of your education. Now, again, I'm not saying that philosophy is the only thing worth studying. On the contrary, it's a university for a reason. It brings together all of the different disciplines, all of the different forms of human knowledge, and they're all important and they all fit together. Right? But as I said, philosophy is the fundamental discipline because it is the one discipline that inquires into the problems that all the other disciplines deal with only in one perspective and one dimension. And it cultivates in us a capacity for non-dogmatic communication and interaction, right? And that I think is what society needs above all right now. So the department is a small department, but that's a good thing, right? Universities are big, alienating institutions sometimes. They're bureaucratic, right? You're going to enjoy your experience here not because of some web form you fill out, but because of the relationships you're able to forge. And so philosophy majors tend to be a small group, but they also tend to be a group that delights in finding that there are other people who thought these crazy questions when they're in secondary school and maybe didn't fit in quite as seamlessly to the secondary school milieu. So we are a tight knit community, but not suffocating. Everyone can be themselves, but we're welcoming. You can get to know us, especially if we ever get back to campus and we can chat in the hallways or in the quad or in our offices. We really miss that informal contact. Some of the best conversations happen when you just bump into somebody or you have a question and I'm in my office and you just pop in and we sit down and get lost in philosophical conversation for half an hour. Hopefully all of that's coming back, right? It's difficult to forge community in online environments. Maybe you think differently. If you're younger, I'm getting up there. I'm not old, but I can see it from there, from where I am. And for me, staring into a computer screen doesn't cut it. I like to be together with the people who I'm studying with and to feel that energy. But we can't do that right now. So that's the first point. We're a small community of roughly 40 majors, 11 or 12 faculty, um, and I think that makes for a better experience, right? You really are going to get to know people, and you're going to get to know people that have the same interests as you do, right? And you're going to learn from each other. I mean, I think at the end of the day, people in all disciplines end up learning from each other, right? The professors maybe steer you in a certain direction, answer some questions, define some terms, frame some problems, but it's ultimately your own energy and your own excitement and your own conversations in class, out of class, that's going to really deepen your insight into the field. I can answer particular questions about courses and so forth. I'm also the undergraduate coordinator in the department, but to do that, it's best to email me because I don't want to be holding up a bunch of signs here or anything. I just wanted to talk about general issues. My email is, and these are all lowercase letters, Noonan, so JNOONAN at uwindsor.ca, or you can find me through the philosophy department homepage. And please feel free to email me any question that you have. If you have philosophical questions, we can always set up a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, and we can talk one-on-one about what your particular questions or issues are. But I just wanted today to try and share as best I can what philosophy is, why I think it's important, and why it's essential that you study it. Right? Studying philosophy doesn't mean that you're a major. Studying philosophy doesn't mean that you minor. It means that you are interested in a course and you take it, and then you see where it goes. But above all, don't be afraid to follow your interests, whether those are philosophical or athletic or artistic, right? You only get this chance once. So reflect on what you want to study and study it. And if that's philosophy, fantastic. And if it's something else, that's also fantastic. All of us, support the diverse interests of our students, and we're not jealous of the other disciplines, although we do think that it's important for people to study philosophy. It seems sometimes like it's some archaic discipline from the past, but it's not. It's not the study of old books, although sometimes we read old books to get ideas and an understanding of how they've evolved historically. But philosophy, as the great German philosopher Hegel said, is its own time comprehended in thought, right? Understanding the basic structures and problems of our world. That's philosophy, and I invite you to come and study it with us. Thank you.